Welcome to the Gray State Revolution. The Forbidden Ones are waking up. Now it's time to invoke a new revolution to the socialist scam to take over America and discover what it will take and what we can actually do about it to conquer the left. Direct from Ridge Runner Studios, here is your host, David Big Dave Ezel.
Good evening, everybody. This is episode 2 of the Gray State Revolution. So I'm just going to jump in here and begin with it. As George Washington prepared to leave office at the end of his second term as president, he wanted to leave the nation with parting words of advice. In 1796, he published his famous farewell address where he urged the nation to stay clear of combinations or associations that tend to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people. Despite Washington's warnings against forming distinct political parties, towards the end of his administration, he witnessed the rise of two competing political entities, the Federalist Party and the Republican Party. One of the excerpts from his speech says, "In offering to you, my countrymen, these counsels of an old and affectionate friend, I dare not hope they will make the strong and lasting impression I could wish. But if I may even flatter myself that they may be productive of some partial benefit, some occasional good, that they may now and then recur to moderate the fury of party spirit, to warn against the mischiefs and foreign intrigue, this hope will be a full recompense for the solicitude for your welfare by which they have been dictated." He also went on to say, "I have already intimated to you the danger of parties in the state, with reference to the founding of them on geographical discriminations. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of parties generally. The spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature. Having its root in the strongest passions of the human mind, it exists under different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or repressed. But in those of the popular form, it is seen as a great rankness and is truly their worst enemy." Washington was trying to tell us what's happening now in our country was an inevitable happening. He was probably a greatest thinker of the Revolutionary period. And that's with his counterparts, Washington, Jefferson, Samuel Adams, John Hancock, the whole bunch. James Monroe, James Madison, Madison's son. What he goes on to say, and what really stuck out to me when I was rereading this speech was, "It agitates a community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another, foments occasionally riot and insurrection. It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption, which finds a facilitated access to the government itself through the channel of party passions. Thus the policy and the will of one country are subjected to the policy and the will of another." This speech he wrote, and it was published on the 19th of September in 1796. That one paragraph completely defines what's happening in our country this day. We're sitting here waiting for the two big Supreme Court rulings on abortion and gun rights. We have the left-leaning parties talking about riots, fights, burning stuff down again. The problem they don't understand now is that while we're waiting for this abortion ruling, where everybody says it's going to be outlawed. It's not really being outlawed. It's just given back to the states where it should have been left in the first place. There's no federal recognition of it in the Constitution. It's not mentioned directly, and it's not a protected right. Much as most people don't want to hear that, this is where we come back to the freedom of choice. Now, it's funny that it's been a pro-life, pro-choice argument for 50 years, and now all of a sudden the tables have switched. Now it's the Republicans hollering that it's pro-choice, and the Democrats are hollering that they don't get a choice. They don't get to choose it. So you're making us be pro-life against our will. They're not. I mentioned in the first episode that all politics are local. Here's one of those instances. If you want to change it within your state, you have the absolute right to do it. You start with your local government elections and you get the candidates you want, and they'll go get to state offices. When they get to the state offices, you can change the rules. You can get them to change the rules any way you see fit. It's your state. The problem the federal government's got with this ruling is it completely demolishes and undermines the actions of the Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood's founder was a devout racist. Margaret Sanger did not want, she geared it towards a certain sect of the population in this country. Y'all know it's true. I know it's true. Everybody knows it's true, and yet we kind of don't talk about it because it's against the norm. We're going to scoot forward a little bit in history. During the end of Washington's second term, a dude named Monroe was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1790. And he was working with the current president at the time as James Madison, and they established the Democratic-Republican Party. And even though it wasn't authorized at the time, Monroe and them, they took Napoleon's offer for the Louisiana Territory, which in hindsight was the right thing to do, but they really didn't have the right to do it. The Senate hadn't voted on it yet. All the rules that apply to a treaty now applied then. Then you go up to 1817, and Monroe became the 5th president of the United States. Why this is important here is because it established what they called the era of good feelings. There was a temporary end of the two-party system with the death of the Federalist Party that occurred at this time in 1817. There was only Democratic Republicans. The Federalist Party formed in the early part of 1790 as they disagreed over key provisions of the Constitution and major foreign policy issues. The party advocated for a strong national government at the expense of the states. Not that the states helped form the federal government. They wanted to reverse the roles. They want an economy based on strong banking, commercial, and manufacturing development, which we still have today, and tended to support Britain over France in its foreign policy. And it doesn't, at this point, matter what they did. It's proven a point here. The Federalist Party and the Democratic-Republican Party were adamantly opposed to each other, much like the Democrats and Republicans are today. So when you think about what Washington said in his speech, and knowing that if you have any history left in school, you know that the foundation of America was built on the individual. And from each individual forms what's called a collective. And the collective is a group of individuals we also call the states. And you can see where this is going. And you can look back at history. You see where mistakes are made. You can watch where they tried to attempt to correct it. And then you can see what the collective in America tends to be. Let me pose this question to you. If I was to ask you right now, what was the primary cause for all the state successions prior to the Civil War? And here's your hint. Lincoln told us at the time what the true cause really was. And it wasn't what you think it is. On July 4th in 1861, Lincoln gave a speech to Congress where he outlined the true reason for the Civil War. Not once in this speech is slavery ever mentioned as cause, but rather it's about the amount of money in which the seceders had taken. Once again, if you ever want to find out what's going on, follow the money. So I'm going to read a quote from this July 4th, 1861 speech he gave to Congress. If one state may succeed, so may another. And when all shall have succeeded and none is left to pay the debts. Is this quite just to our creditors? Did we notify them of this sage view of ours when we borrowed their money? If we now recognize this doctrine by allowing the seceders to go in peace, it is difficult to see what we can do if others choose to go or to extort terms upon which they will promise to remain. In other words, if I was just to paraphrase that entire quote, what he was really saying was, if the South succeeds, who then shall pay our bills? So, thinking about that, how does this speech from 161 years ago apply today? Well, if you look around, we once again have a government that's out of control. They're applying unjust burdens to the middle class. They found a way to get more money from us without even calling it a tax. You pull up to the gas pump, you see the gas prices. I don't have to tell you. You go to the grocery store, you see the food prices going up because the gas prices went up. We've been running around with masks for 2 years, and there is no reasonable explanation as of why. In the beginning, everybody understood it. But now, why? Why? As the virus has gotten more contagious, it's gotten less viral. The virility of the virus is not like it was. You may feel bad for a couple of days, but hey, you feel bad with the flu for about 7. So there's no reason for the mask mandates, but yet we're still following them because we're just not doing anything. The government's given expectations that it's impossible for a country to meet. We're in the middle of funding a war we have no business being in, and for what cause? At this point, you have to ask yourself, does the government detach themselves from the public, or have they detached themselves from the public's interest? Once again, we back up to, you still think the Civil War was main primary cause was slavery. It was a secondary cause of the war. It was not the primary cause of the war. The primary cause of the war was unjust taxation on the southern states, and that's what they thought at the time. I'm not advocating, I'm not denying it, I'm just telling you what the facts are. I bet y'all, if a lot of people that listen to this right now, I bet y'all still think there weren't former slaves elected to Congress after the Civil War. Go look up and see how many there were elected to Congress after the Civil War. The problem becomes now is how many of them quit voting and started voting Democrat, and why? Because their vote was taken away from them by Southern Democrats. Nathan Bedford Forrest created the Klan. They rode all over the country, lynching, burning, proliferating in public, and kept them away from the voting booth. It didn't stop. That went on for years. The most prevalent time that it was done, and the one that really sticks out to me, was, I bet y'all still think that the Food Stamp Act of 1964 was a basic humanitarian effort to help the poor in our country. And I hate to tell you, you are wrong. The Food Stamp Act of 1964, why guised as a humanitarian effort, it was strictly the Dixiecrats putting on a show. I'm about to give you a quote from the leader of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Food Stamp Act of 1964 by President Lyndon Johnson. Now, this is a pretty unpopular quote. I'm just quoting him. I'm not using this in any way As my view, I'm just going to quote what he said. These Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us since they've got something now they've never had before. The political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we got to do something about this. We got to give them a little something. Just enough to quiet them down, but not enough to make a difference. For if we don't move at all, then their allies will line up against us, and there'll be no way of us stopping them then. We'll lose the filibuster, and there'll be no way of putting a brake on all sorts of wild legislation. It'll be Reconstruction all over again. And if we pass this Food Stamp Act of 1964, I guarantee you I'll have those niggers voting Democratic for 200 years. And yet, this is common knowledge, and yet we still play racial, political politics. I can go on and on. I can give you another example. I bet you still think that Medicare, Medicaid, and the ACA, or Obamacare, is a governmental attempt to help take care of the people in the country. And then if I told you it's a slammed attempt to take over our country at all, it's a slammed attempt to take over the country's health care from the states, from the collective. Because Medicaid is funded partially by the states, but they're primarily funded from grants from the federal government. For years, we've allowed Congress to do the thinking for us. But what I'm beginning to see and what the trend's coming in America is we the people have had enough. From the last presidential election to now, the collectives have begun to wake up. And when did it start? I can pinpoint exactly the exact report. I can see it every time I think about it. CNN had their reporter on the street, and he was talking, and he's saying, we're here, I forgot what the city was, but he said these are mostly peaceful protesters. But in the background of his camera angle, the city was burning to the damn ground. Or maybe it was the ESPN reporter was interviewing the NASCAR driver that won the race, and you could clearly hear the chants in the background, F Joe Biden, back and forth, and she tried to say, oh, let's go Brandon. Well, she created a meme and a t-shirt and a whole entire country's theme for the next elections that's coming, these midterms on our doorstep, and the next presidential election in 2024. What's coming sort now is understanding that the time for being woke is coming to a fast halt. The first call now that we actually have control over is a revolutionary idea that we can change the outcome in the voting booth. That's true. But let's take it a step further. Why don't we take them all out? Let's vote every incumbent out of office this fall. You've got a chance to change 435 seats in the House. They're up every 2 years. If you don't do it now, we can do it in November of 2024. Democrat and Republicans, take them all out. Replace them with the people, though. Here's the point. Replace them with people that are true believers in what you back up. And when I say that, I say true believers, I'm talking about true Democrats. A true Democrat is somebody you actually have some things in common with. Mostly, the difference used to be between Democrats and Republicans was social issues were kind of always on the table, and the other parts of the politics were there. Reagan gave in to Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill gave in to Reagan. They passed a lot of laws that benefited people in this country. They passed them together. They had to work together to get stuff done. Everybody had to give up something, and everybody gained something. That's how the political process is truly supposed to work. But we're not there anymore. We have extremists on the left, and we have super extremists on the right, too. I'm not saying that any party is any better than the other one, I hear these other podcasters talk all the time about the Democrats are the cause of your problems. The Republicans may not be the answer, but the Democrats are the cause. The problem is, here we go, and I'm going to bring it up. Nobody wants to talk about it. I'll probably get banned for this when I go to post the replay of this live. Is that while the Democrats have been hollering they're pro-choice all these years on one issue, they were not pro-choice on this mask mandate issue. It was all about what they could control, who they could control, when they could control them. Now, when you go in to vote people out of office, the best idea you've got is you need to vote people out that are truly relics in the system. People like, and I just call their names, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Charles Schumer, all those old hats that sit there. Hell, Lindsey Graham too. I can't stand him, but that's my issue. Vote them all out. I don't live in that state, but I sure hope the people of South Carolina vote them out, vote more people out, vote more people in like their junior senator. Scott he's a smart dude. I've watched Madison Cawthorn lose his race. He was supposed to be the baby face of the Republican Party, but he got voted out in 2 years. That's true change. That's getting people and finding them out and doing what they want. Dan Crenshaw is another one that needs to go. He's a flip-flopping piece of S who says one thing to get elected and does something totally different when his back's against the wall. Once you vote all of those people out, the rest of the swamp is easy to get rid of. We're sitting here right now, this night at 9:22, waiting for results of 2 major Supreme Court cases. In the meantime, the Supreme Court's putting barricades up around the Supreme Court building. They have made sure all the people are out of the building. I guarantee you those decisions will be released around midnight tonight, if they're going to release them. If not, it will be on the next quote, which is towards the election time. It's 2 or 3 more months before they release the next results of all these cases. You've got left calling for violence and riots. I don't hear anybody on the right doing anything, but here's what I'm going to say. I don't advocate violence in any form. And I was always told, don't you ever throw the first punch. But if somebody throws the first punch on you, you take that punch, then you finish the fight. And you better be left standing. Take up for yourself. Took me a long time to learn that when I was a kid, but once I learned it, I can promise you nobody mess with me again. My brother-in-law will tell a story about when we were in college, and he'll tell you that he saw me knock a guy out. He didn't know what the cause was, but he watched me pop him with one fist. Well, I'm not real sure if he saw it. He heard it. Everybody on the campus knew about it. I knocked the boy out. It wasn't my intention to knock him out, but I couldn't stand with him messing with that girl. She did not like it, so I told him to stop. He popped his mouth off. I popped his jaw. He hit the ground. Not a big deal. Not bragging. It's just how it happened. So I say that to say this. Don't wait around. And to the leftists who are planning to ride over these rulings to take away the federal government's interference in the states, here's what you should be getting out of this. We the people are sick of it. The people, the collective, are sick of a few controlling the paths and thoughts of many. You want to know how to get out of this gray state and end the gray state? You take a stand. And you take a stand where it is in your best interest to take a stand. If they cause all these riots over this abortion issue ruling, and I can tell y'all now, with them putting up all the barricades around the Supreme Court, they're sending it back to the states. It's not a federal problem anymore. Planned Parenthood can hang it up. They won't have the say and the control and the forcing of abortions, and I'll just say it. You might have states that say, okay, we're not going to outlaw abortions, but you've got to go through 3 weeks of therapy. I mean, you got to go talk to a psychologist 3 times because we want you to have your mental health in stream with your decision. Because most abortions are done in rash decision times. They don't ever think it through. They're only concerned about the now. They don't think about the later. And if they do think about the later, it's how much problem having a child with a teenager is going to be for them in the future, and not worried about can that child from that teenager be a productive citizen. We've got case after case after case of people that could have been an abortion that are leaders in this country. And that's the truth. That's a fact. When I say leaders in this country, I'm not talking about government. I'm talking about in your local areas. Mayors, board members, teachers, preachers, Sunday school teachers. They're productive members of the society. Everybody deserves that chance. The foundation of this country was based on the individual and not based on the collective. Our founding fathers knew it. They wrote a living document that says it. They completely get it. And now we find ourselves in a police state or a gray state where what you will see, you won't see the National Guard in any of this stuff. What you're going to see is the local police forces. We saw it in Canada with theirs. We saw it in Washington, D.C. when the truckers were circling Washington, D.C. and the cops told them, if you come in the city, we're going to arrest you. Why? Why would you? If they're just driving around and they're not causing problems, you had no right to do it. Well, it's our city and we can do what we want. Yeah, but you know, when they appointed Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court, Lyndon Johnson was also privy to that, and he was a racist, and I've proven that point tonight. The right for you to swing your fist ends where my nose begins. In other words, you got a right to your free speech. You got a right to limit your ideas. You got a right to speak your ideas. But the minute your ideas or your rights or that start interfering with the collective, when a minority of people in this country starting to control the focus of many, then it's become wrong. If the federal government is telling all these people in the states what to do, there's very few of them. There's only 535 members of the entire Congress, 435 reps, 535 senators. And that's based on population, of course, from the Census Bureau. When you have the Congress who are more concerned about something that was said or done 2 years ago, on January the 6th, that becomes their primary focus. What George Washington said is true. Now they're trying to invoke their will on you. They're trying to make you believe that Trump stood up there and said, oh, everybody go invade the White House. I hate to tell y'all, my estimation was that I read everywhere was there was approximately 600 to 850,000 people in D.C. that day. You had what? 300-400 go into the Capitol? And they're hollering all these Liz Cheney, Benny Thompson, Adam Schiff, all these people. Oh, they tried to overthrow the government. I can tell you right now, there was enough people on the mall in D.C. that day. If they wanted to overthrow the government, we would have an overthrown government. There were plenty of people to do it. But as usual, the people, the collective, that were standing outside were smarter than the other ones that went in. Now, I say that, I saw the videos. Everybody, and the funny part is, all you people on the January 6th committee, y'all are ignorant. We've seen all the videos where the cops were asking them to come in the door. One judge ruled it. And I believe how case law works is now it can be shown and used in these other cases, even on appeal. It becomes what's known as case law. So these attorneys to these people of January 6th as being illegally prosecuted, in my opinion, use that case law and see if you can't get your other ones thrown out. I say another thing. If you're in the vicinity of these riots in this country, when these decisions get handed down, they're going to do it. They've proven to us time and time again, from Ferguson, Missouri forward, from any school shooting you've seen forward. They'll use anything they can to do anything they can to you. The government don't care. They're actually non-discriminatory. They're only for themselves. They don't discriminate against anybody but everybody. They're sitting on their little tufts in D.C., not doing a thing. And even if you think these Marjorie Taylor Greene and the like are for you, you would be wrong. They're not. They're for themselves. I don't care what their rhetoric is. They sure hadn't offered up any problem-solving stuff to lay forward to the public. They may have done it behind closed doors, but that don't mean anything. If they hadn't made an objective statement to let you know that they actually have another thought and an idea, and they're just letting the people, oh, well, they're the ones in control, and we're just going to let them run it. You can let them run it. You can also be an outspoken opponent. And I understand that we don't see everything because the news media is so flawed. I gave 2 examples of that and when the people started. I can tell you that I was working about 2 hours from the house and I was at a gas pump. And when I got out, we were all just standing around looking. Gas had just gone up 35 cents that day. Hell, we were $4.98 a gallon. And everybody was talking at the pumps, and it was like, I voted for him, but I'm not voting for him again. I vote for anybody but a D on my card. I said, well, just at the top of the box, just click all Republican candidates all the way down. I said, but don't forget about your local elections. They're just as important. As I was talking before I knew what was going on, I had like 5 or 6 people standing around me asking me questions. Because anybody's looking anywhere to get their news or their ideas other than the news media. That's a sad, sad day. I don't even listen to Fox News anymore. I go find articles, I read it, I make my own decisions. I don't listen to the talking heads. Now I like to listen to my people that I like talk. I listen to 2 or 3 podcasters every day. One in particular I'd never miss a show of. I don't necessarily agree with all he says, but I agree with most everything. We have the same views on it all. And you can watch him at 9 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday nights on Fox News Channel. Everybody knows Democrats are all into gun control and gun legislation. We're waiting for that Supreme Court ruling too. That'll change the face of everything that's going on. You say it won't, but it has national implications. At this point, what I'm really trying to say is we've allowed the 2-party system to take hold in this country, and it has. And there's no going back. We're here now. What's essentially started happening is the government is interfering with exactly what they said they were here for. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government's starting to interfere with the pursuit of happiness. And that's where it goes. That's where it ends. And that's where it's supposed to stop. your inaction by not going to vote, by not raising enough stink. There's been enough evidence purported forward that there might have been enough interference. There might have been enough cheating to change the course of a presidential election. I'm not saying the election didn't occur. I'm just saying I don't believe the results myself. Not 100%. But if you think I think that there are counties where there were more voters and people than live in them, then you might have a problem. That means you can't do math. But of course, when Jimmy Carter developed the Department of Education as a seat, the Secretary of Education, he really was taking that part over, and he dumbed down America. There's a lot I don't agree with, but I have to live with. We can stop them interfering with our pursuit of happiness, but you can't do it by inaction. We're going to have to take and call it a revolution. And I'm not talking about gun violence revolution. I'm talking about a true voting booth revolution, where you go in and voice your opinion. You affect your local elections first and you go forward. If it comes down to, if it breaks down into full-fledged civil war again, where are you going to be? You going to be with the minority? I call it the gray state because the police are what's going to be the difference here. The military won't stand against its own people. There'll be a few that will. And we're not stupid enough to believe that we can fight a F-35 and we can fight a F-15 and we can fight a drone. But there are people that believe in the foundation of this country for the last 200 years plus. The collective can make a change. It's in the power of the collective or the states and have the ability to make a change. That's why our government is set up the way it is. We are not a democracy. Let's get that clear. I've heard all week about democracy this, democracy that. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And if we had an education system that was worth a damn, you'd all know this already, and we wouldn't be having this discussion. But once again, the Democrats, you can thank for that. You can thank Jimmy Carter for the dumbing down of America. Also, if you hadn't noticed, we're living exactly like we did under Jimmy Carter, under this current administration. And yet, they're flipping out over a state seat in Texas by the border. Oh, it's Hispanic. I don't know how dumb y'all are, but if you've ever talked to any Hispanics, they're conservative too. Do you think they all vote Democrat? The Democrats think they all vote Democrats? It doesn't make sense. Because the Democrats are definitely against the family unit. And all of the Central American country people that I've talked to, they're all for a family unit. It's their culture. That's how it is. So that was just a few things. Going to get an episode out tonight to give you something to think about. If you go back to the past will tell us how not to repeat our future steps. We are in a gray state. You can get used to it. We can have the ability to change it in November. But that's your choice to make. That's your choice to determine where you're going to stand. That's your choice to decide if you're going to get to live free or not. Because right now, we're not living free. Right now, we're living under whoever's running the country ideals. Because our current president isn't running crap. He can't even think. He's always on vacation. He can't give a speech without fumbling it up and being stupid. He can't even ride a bicycle, apparently, since he flopped over the other day. And I understand people have wrecks and all that, but I wouldn't have jumped up. I'd have made a joke, and then I would have started talking to people. I wouldn't have hopped up and go running to a kid like that's what I was trying to do. And then watching the news media make fools of themselves, trying to make you think that that's what was going on. But I digress. We're going to get a word from our sponsor now. I had to get all of that out. We're going to give you this commercial from our sponsor. You need to go visit our page, please.
Do you have a friend or family member you're having trouble buying a gift for? You just can't find the right gift for the person who has everything? Then go to Rockin' Magnolia Customs, a place where you can pick out and design the perfect gift for that special someone. That's RockinMagnoliaCustoms.com or find them on Facebook at Rockin' Magnolia Customs.
And that's Rockin' Magnolia Customs. There's no G in Rockin', and the Customs is spelled with a K. That's RockinMagnoliaCustoms.com. And we thank them so much for being a sponsor of my show. Tune in next week. Maybe we'll have our results from the two major rulings that we're waiting for from the Supreme Court if they come out this week. I'll do a show next Tuesday night. We will definitely be keeping everything abreast. Go to my Facebook page on Ridge Runner Studios and like my page. I'll be giving updates there. I always post some little something here or there once in a while. If it's important, I'll post it. Look for a return of the Nursing Underground within the next 2 weeks. I'm working on a show now with talking about the current state of healthcare and what's going on with all these nursing home closures across the country and why they're going on. I'll be talking about the sale of the DeKalb County Nursing Home in Georgia. We will be talking about Our Lady of the Poor's sale, the largest nursing home, the one most people looked at. And I'll be discussing that kind of thing. But this is David from Ridge Runner Studios. This has been the Gray State Revolution. Hope y'all have a good night and a good week. Keep your eye out for people out there that need your help. May not be much you can do, but a kind word. But people will need your help. Y'all have a good night, and God bless.